Imagine growing up believing that life is meant to be safe and predictable. But one young man believed the exact opposite. He chased danger, survived a brutal war, stood face to face with death more than once, and transformed every painful experience into unforgettable stories. His novels inspired millions, changed modern literature forever, and earned him the highest honor a writer could receive. Yet behind his fearless image was a man fighting a battle no one could see. This is not just the story of a famous author. It is the extraordinary journey of Ernest Hemingway, a man who lived boldly, wrote honestly, and left behind a legacy the world will never forget. Chapter 1. A Boy Who Loved Adventure. Long before Ernest Hemingway became one of the world's greatest writers, he was simply a curious little boy growing up in Oak Park, Illinois. He was born on July 21st, 1899, into a family that believed children should learn from both books and nature. His father, Clarence Hemingway, was a respected doctor who loved spending time outdoors. Whenever he had a free day, he took young Ernest into the forests, along quiet rivers, and beside peaceful lakes. There, Ernest learned how to fish, hunt, and observe nature with patience. These were more than childhood adventures, they were lessons that quietly shaped the writer he would one day become. Every tree, every river, and every wild animal sparked his imagination in ways he could not yet understand. As Ernest grew older, he became fascinated by the small details that most people ignored. He watched birds build their nests, listened to the sound of flowing water, and noticed how the light changed the forest from morning to evening. Nature became his first classroom. It taught him patience, courage, and the importance of careful observation. Years later, these vivid memories would bring his stories to life, allowing readers to feel as if they were standing beside him in the wilderness. His mother, Grace Hemingway, introduced him to a very different world. She loved music, art, and literature, and she wanted her children to appreciate beauty and creativity. Although Ernest often preferred fishing trips over piano lessons, his mother's influence helped him understand that powerful stories are not only about adventure, they are also about emotion. The balance between his father's love for the outdoors and his mother's passion for art gave him a unique way of seeing the world. By his teenage years, Ernest was no longer just a boy who enjoyed adventure. He was becoming someone who wanted to understand life through experience. Every journey into the woods, every quiet afternoon by the lake, and every challenge he faced added another piece to his character. Without realizing it, the future Nobel Prize-winning author was already collecting the experiences that would inspire some of the greatest novels ever written. But the peaceful days of his childhood would not last forever. Soon, the world itself would change, and Ernest's life would take a dramatic, new direction. Chapter 2. The Young Reporter. After graduating from high school in 1917, Ernest Hemingway made a surprising decision. Instead of going to college, he chose to work as a reporter for the Kansas City Star. It was one of the most respected newspapers in America, and its editors followed strict writing rules: use short sentences, choose strong words, avoid unnecessary details, and tell the truth clearly. Hemingway embraced these principles. They became the foundation of his writing style and later made his novels famous around the world. Working as a reporter changed the way Hemingway saw life. Every assignment introduced him to new people and real human struggles. He reported on accidents, crime, business, and everyday events. Journalism taught him to observe carefully, ask the right questions, and describe powerful moments with only a few words. He realized that simple writing could often be more powerful than complicated language. But while the newsroom sharpened his skills, the world outside was changing rapidly. World War I had spread across Europe, and thousands of young men were volunteering to serve. Hemingway was only 18 years old, yet he felt a strong desire to witness history instead of merely writing about it. He wanted to experience life beyond newspaper pages. That decision would soon lead him into one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century and change him forever. Chapter 3: The War That Changed Everything. In 1918, Ernest Hemingway tried to join the U.S. Army, but poor eyesight kept him from enlisting. Refusing to stay behind, he volunteered with the American Red Cross as an ambulance driver and was sent to the Italian front during World War I. At just 18 years old, he found himself surrounded by destroyed villages, wounded soldiers, and the constant sound of artillery. For the first time, he witnessed the true cost of war not through newspaper reports, but with his own eyes. Everything changed on the night of July 8, 1918, while delivering food and supplies to Italian soldiers near the front lines. An Austrian mortar shell exploded beside him. More than 200 pieces of shrapnel tore into his legs. Despite his severe injuries, Hemingway carried a wounded Italian soldier to safety before collapsing. His courage earned him the Italian Silver Medal of Military Valor, one of Italy's highest military honors for bravery. During his recovery in a military hospital in Milan, Hemingway met Agnes von Kurowski, an American nurse. As the weeks passed, the two grew close, and Hemingway believed he had found the woman he would marry. But after he returned home, Agnes ended their relationship in a letter, explaining that she had fallen in love with someone else. The heartbreak left a deep emotional scar. Years later, both the pain of war and the loss of his first love became the inspiration for one of his greatest novels, A Farewell to Arms. The war ended, but Hemingway never truly left it behind. The wounds on his body healed with time, yet the memories remained. They changed the way he viewed courage, love, loss, and death, the very themes that would define his writing for the rest of his life. Chapter 4: Paris and the Lost Generation. After returning from the war, Ernest Hemingway struggled to adjust to ordinary life. In 1921, he married Hadley Richardson, and soon afterward the couple moved to Paris, France. At that time, Paris had become the center of the literary world, attracting young writers, artists, and thinkers from across Europe and America. For Hemingway, it was the perfect place to begin a new chapter. In Paris, he met some of the greatest minds of his generation, including F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, and Ezra Pound. Stein encouraged him to write honestly and develop his own voice, while Pound helped him improve his craft and introduced him to influential editors. Fitzgerald admired Hemingway's talent and supported the publication of his early work. These friendships pushed him to become a stronger and more disciplined writer. Gertrude Stein famously described Hemingway and many other young writers as the lost generation. They were people whose lives had been shaped by World War I. They questioned old beliefs, searched for meaning, and expressed their experiences through literature. Hemingway became one of the most important voices of this generation, writing with a style that was direct, realistic, and emotionally powerful. In 1925, Hemingway published his first major collection of stories, In Our Time. A year later came The Sun Also Rises, the novel that made him an international literary star. Inspired by his own experiences in Paris and Spain, the book introduced readers to a fresh style unlike anything they had seen before. At just 27 years old, Ernest Hemingway was no longer an aspiring writer. He had become one of the most exciting new voices in modern literature. Chapter 5: A Life Full of Adventure. Success did not change Ernest Hemingway's love for adventure. Instead of living a quiet life as a famous author, he traveled wherever life felt most dangerous and exciting. He visited Spain to study the tradition of bullfighting, explored the wild landscapes of East Africa, and spent months deep-sea fishing in the waters of Cuba. He believed that a writer should experience life before writing about it. During the 1930s, Hemingway also worked as a war correspondent. He reported on the Spanish Civil War, witnessing fierce battles and the suffering of ordinary people. These experiences inspired his famous novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls, published in 1940. The book explored courage, sacrifice, and the human cost of war, becoming one of the greatest novels of the 20th century. Adventure followed Hemingway wherever he went. While on safari in Africa, he survived dangerous encounters with wild animals. Years later, in 1954, he survived 2 plane crashes on consecutive days while traveling in Africa. Newspapers around the world mistakenly reported that he had died. Although he survived, he suffered serious injuries that affected his health for the rest of his life. By then, Hemingway had earned a reputation that extended far beyond literature. To many people, he was not only a brilliant writer, but also a symbol of courage and resilience. Yet the injuries he carried and the emotional weight of everything he had witnessed were beginning to take a quiet toll that few people could see. Chapter 6: The Old Man and the Sea. By the early 1950s, many critics believed Ernest Hemingway's best years were over. Some even claimed that he would never write another great novel. Instead of arguing with them, Hemingway returned to what he knew best, writing from real life. Living in Cuba, he was inspired by an elderly fisherman whose determination deeply moved him. In 1952, Hemingway published The Old Man and the Sea. The novel tells the story of Santiago, an old fisherman who struggles for days to catch a giant marlin in the open sea. Although the story is simple, it explores powerful ideas about courage, endurance, hope, and human dignity. Readers around the world were deeply moved, and the book quickly became an international bestseller. The novel restored Hemingway's reputation. In 1953, it won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. A year later, in 1954, Hemingway received the Nobel Prize in Literature for his lasting contribution to modern literature, with The Old Man and the Sea playing a major role in that recognition. It was the highest honor of his career and confirmed his place among the greatest writers in history. But even as the world celebrated his success, Hemingway's health was quietly declining. The injuries from years of war, accidents, and adventure were catching up with him. Behind the Nobel Prize and worldwide fame, he was beginning a battle that no award could ever cure. Chapter 7: The Silent Battle Within. Although Ernest Hemingway had achieved worldwide fame, his personal life was becoming increasingly difficult. Years of war injuries, 2 African plane crashes, chronic pain, and repeated concussions had weakened both his body and mind. He also suffered from high blood pressure and other health problems that made everyday life more challenging. As his condition worsened, Hemingway began to experience severe depression and anxiety. He became convinced that government agents were watching him and listening to his phone calls. Many people believed these fears were imaginary. Decades later, released government records confirmed that the FBI had in fact kept a file on Hemingway, although the extent of its impact on him remains debated. By then, however, his mental health had already deteriorated. In 1960, Hemingway was admitted to the Mayo Clinic in the United States, where he received electroconvulsive therapy, a common treatment for severe depression at the time. While the treatment helped some patients, Hemingway felt that it damaged his memory. For a writer whose life depended on words, struggling to remember ideas was devastating. He found it increasingly difficult to write, and the frustration became almost unbearable. On the morning of July 2, 1961, at his home in Ketchum, Idaho, Ernest Hemingway died by suicide at the age of 61. The news shocked the world. Millions mourned the loss of a man whose stories had inspired generations. His life ended tragically, but his influence on literature was far from over. Chapter 8: A Legacy That Never Dies. Ernest Hemingway's life ended in 1961, but his voice never disappeared. His novels continued to reach new generations of readers, and his simple yet powerful writing style influenced countless authors around the world. Books such as The Old Man and the Sea, A Farewell to Arms, and For Whom the Bell Tolls remain classics of modern literature. Today, Hemingway's works are studied in schools and universities across many countries. His stories teach more than history or literature. They explore courage, love, loss, resilience, and the complexity of human nature. More than 6 decades after his death, his words continue to inspire readers, proving that a great writer can outlive his own lifetime through the stories he leaves behind. Conclusion: Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "There is nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed." His life proved those words were more than a quote, they were his reality. He turned adventure into stories, pain into literature, and ordinary words into timeless masterpieces. If you enjoyed this journey through Hemingway's life and want to discover more remarkable stories from history, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next documentary. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep learning from history, because every great story has the power to change the way we see the world.